This is Pet Life Radio. Let's talk pets.
And good morning, good afternoon, and in this case, definitely afternoon. We'll tell you why in a minute. But wherever you happen to be, you are here live with Dr. Jeff Werber, your host for the next 30 minutes here on Pet Life Radio. Ask the Vets with Dr. Jeff. We're here for you. We're here for your pets. Talk about anything you want to talk about. And hope you're having a wonderful Sunday to start things off. Today, as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, we have a special guest who I kind of met remotely. You know, it's one of those things where when you're in the pet world and you leave some kind of mark, maybe a stain, it's a small enough world that we have an opportunity to meet and speak. I see that we just lost an hour back. So my guest, first of all, let's tell you how to get a hold of us. Very easy. We'd love to hear from you. And there are a couple of ways to do it. Number one, 877-385-8882. Once again, 877-385-8882. Or better yet, join us here live on Zoom. You go on live to PetLifeRadio.com. Click on the shows. You'll scroll down to Ask the Vets with Dr. Jeff, and you click on that, and there will be a link for you to join us on Zoom. Great way. We can talk to you live. As I say, almost every week, this is one of the futures of veterinary medicine. Get used to it. Talking to your vet, talking to the health professional, virtually online with your pet on your lap, or if it's a big dog next to you on the couch, though they shouldn't be on the couch, but sure, we let them on the couch anyway. And then that's how you're going to talk to your veterinarian. So my guest today is, I was actually a guest on his podcast, Shawn Wilkie, and, you know, someone that we're going to find out, we're going to ask him, you know, the connection. How is it? Because I'm always amazed. For me, as you know, becoming a veterinarian was the calling. I want to do this ever since I was a little kid. And I love meeting people that are not, you know, that are in this pet world, in the vet world. And, you know, what are their stories? How did they get involved? When did their love affair with animals and pets start? So anyway, Shawn Wilkie. Shawn is way in the northern eastern part of Canada. He's from Nova Scotia. He's in a little island now, and he's going to tell me what about it. It's like a little vacation island. And definitely a pet lover. I enjoyed myself on his podcast, and he's our guest today. So, Shawn, welcome to Pet Life Radio's Ask the Vets, and tell us where you are in northern eastern Canada.
Yeah, great, Jeff. I'm super happy to be here. I'm in a little tiny community called Margaree. For anybody that likes salmon fishing, it's got some of the best salmon fishing in the world. And it also has some of the worst internet in the world. So I apologize. I just cut off just before we started. And yeah, how did I get into the pet space? Really interesting story. You know, I think life is kind of like this. A friend of mine described life as living in a glass building, and every opportunity that you ever could imagine walks by your glass office. And I think that, you know, and you have to just look up for opportunities from time to time. So this opportunity came to me. I was building speech recognition software and working with speech for human medical doctors. And I ended up meeting a veterinarian from Houston, Texas, a guy named Brian Poteet, that had developed a vocabulary that was specific for medical transcription in the veterinary field. And with my software experience and his veterinary experience, we started a company. And so that was how I got in, just off. And, you know, it was even weirder than that, Jeff. Here's how the story worked. I was going to do some consulting in Costa Rica. I get introduced to this vet that lived in Houston a week before I went to Costa Rica. And I was stopping in Houston on my way back from Costa Rica to see my university best friend. And I'm on the call, and I said, you know, I have this little company in Nova Scotia. We have 20 people working for us. And he's like, oh, I'm in Houston. We have about 20 people working for me. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be in Houston next week. And literally flew into Houston, drank a case of beer with Brian in his office, started a company, and that's how I got into the pet space. Sold my first company back a year and a half ago, and then just couldn't stay away from it. That's when they started the podcast. And then, you know, I just had to start another company in the vet space, And so I started Talkatoo, and that's how it happened.
One of the things that I'm so busy now also is, you know, like I say, you throw enough, you know what, against the wall, something's bound to stick at some point. And I got so involved with 4 different projects going on at once. And fortunately, unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, they all stuck. So that's why right now I'm so swamped. But tell me about, first of all, tell me about the podcast. How did that all start?
Yeah, so I'm a tech guy, right? I think I'm on 6 tech companies now. And, I love technology. And when I sold my first company in the vet space, I said, you know what? There's so much innovation happening in veterinary medicine and no one knows about it. They had just started the Innovation Summit at Texas A&M. And after I had some time on my hands, I said to my partner in crime, a friend of mine, Dr. Ivan Zach, I said, why don't we start a podcast? And he's like, what's the podcast? And I was like, Ivan, you're 38 years old and you don't know what a podcast is. And then he said, let's start a podcast. So we started the podcast thinking, this is a great way to take all of this innovation and put it in front of the people that need it the most.
And we, by the way, what I've learned, and now is, I'm involved in my own tech company at AirVet, and I'm kind of not so surprised what you're saying about how many of the doctors don't really understand technology, which is, one of the battles, one of the challenges that we have in marketing something to someone who doesn't really appreciate or understand it. How can we expect them in turn to market it to their constituents, or in the case of the veterinarian, to their clients? And so it's double challenge. And interestingly, when we talk to clients directly, they get it right away. It's the veterinarians that are the challenge. So what are some of the subjects that you cover on your podcast?
Oh my God, it's so varied. We go from artificial intelligence to new innovative meditation techniques to help people balance the stress and, the compassion fatigue. And, but we've seen so much stuff. Like one of my favorite ones was this vitals monitoring device that was set up so that they could check the vitals of pets without going into the cages. Now, that doesn't seem like that big of a deal when you're talking about pets. But when your pet is 500 pounds and could eat a human for lunch, a tiger at one of the zoos, to be able to measure vitals wirelessly without having to go in the cage, without having to sedate an animal, that was one of the things that kind of blew my mind. I thought that was really cool. And probably one of my other favorites is this company called Signal Pet, and they're using artificial intelligence to examine radiographs and kind of do triage work with radiographs. And that's happening in human medicine, but to see it happening in veterinary medicine, especially when you have those vets that might be on Cape Breton Island. They might be the only vet up at night. And if they can use an AI to kind of give them a second opinion, this type of technology is changing the friggin' world.
Oh, no, absolutely. And, I'm familiar with Signal Pet. It is rather amazing. And, the device you're talking about also is amazing because what it's doing for even small animals is if we have an animal and there are a number of ways to do it. Some of these devices are somewhat costly. I don't think people need it just to have it. However, for a veterinarian to have them, say like a dozen of them in their practice, and then when they are going to send home an animal who is convalescing, and they don't need them at the hospital anymore, but you still wanted to monitor them, to be able to put this device on them and see what their heart rate is, their respiration rate, their temperature, et cetera. And the vet can just go online and do it remotely. And again, not even how often, on telemedicine, I'll ask a client to take a pet's temperature. How do I do that? They don't even know how to take a temperature. I said, this is old fashioned. Go out, get yourself a rectal thermometer, set it aside, don't mistake it for yours and stick it in your mouth one time, and keep it just for your pet. Label it for Bowser, and you got to know. And the average temperature for a dog, and I tell them, it's 100.5 to 102.5, 103 on the borderline on a hot day. Don't worry about it. But to be able to do that and monitor all these things, monitor activity remotely, is very important information for a doctor who's monitoring a patient. And yes, it can be done remotely. And so I think that we're advancing slowly, but we're advancing quite a bit in those arenas. So when I was on your podcast, you showed me a sample of the Talkatoo. And let's talk about that, because that is really amazing. And for any veterinarians out there listening, or any of you out there, you might want to talk to your veterinarians, because one of the limiting factors for us to do what we do is time in almost anything we do. And to be able, now everything is electronic medical records, and at least semi. And to be able to write up a synopsis of a case, to be able to just talk in this, like I'm talking to you now, and it happens so seamlessly, I found amazing, and your veterinarians will too. So, Shawn, I want to talk about Talkatoo. Tell us what it does, why it's so unique.
Yeah, for sure. So the idea behind Talkatoo is quite simple. Machine learning, artificial intelligence, all of these things have grown a lot in the years that have passed between now and 10 years ago when voice recognitions first came out. And so what we set out to do with Talkatoo is build a very simple piece of software. Our software is so simple, it literally has one button. So it has a start dictation button. You click that button, put the cursor in any software. So whether it's your practice management software or an email, and then just start talking. And everywhere's on any computer, so whether it's Windows or Mac, you can hit that button and not have to type. And so, Jeff, you're familiar with just the mundane drudgery of medical records that exist in veterinary medicine. It's probably veterinarians' least favorite piece of the job is doing their medical records. And so we knew that, and we wanted to solve that or at least help with it. And that's why we've created our software. Simple to use. It literally has one button. You don't have to go back to school to learn how to use it. And you can type in any field on any computer, and it recognizes the veterinary and medical terms, unlike Siri or Google Voice. It knows what you're speaking about and will allow you to put that medical record into that practice management tool or into a referral letter in probably a third of the time that it would take to type it. And if you're a slow typist, it'll do it in like 10% of what it would have taken you to two-finger type an email.
I'm sometimes too fast where my fingers go before I tell them where to go. And that's disaster because I read back what I thought I just typed. I said, wait a second. What is that word? So no, I 100% know. Now, and for entities, for companies, if they wanted to put it into their software instead of, say, Google Voice, is that something that's easy to be done?
Yeah, so we haven't gone that route yet. So we don't have an API for other companies. What we're very focused on right now is the veterinarian hospital or the veterinarian chain of hospitals that have doctors that are just not able to get their medical records done. But we will eventually create an API so other companies like AirVet, like your company, could leverage our technology to increase the accuracy of the dictation.
Right. Yeah, that would be amazing. And so let's talk about real quick before we go on a break. Your pets, what do you have?
I've got a 4.5-pound Chihuahua named Shiloh. She's 14 years old and is a cranky old lady, but she's a lovely dog to her family.
And so, it's interesting. We used to joke and call Chihuahuas, and some of us still do, land sharks because they are quick. They still have a bite. They got those sharp teeth. And I think there are more bites registered by Chihuahuas than pit bulls. Unfortunately, they don't make the news because they're not as damaging. But they're amazing. But none of us like to work with Chihuahuas. And there's a type of sedation or control that we veterinarians talk about when we have a difficult animal to work with. We call it brutathane. And because all the anesthetics have an A&E at the end, isoflurane, sevoflurane, right, metafane, right. So we used to call it brutathane, meaning using brute force. And you can't use brute force on a 4-pound dog. So they'll crack in your hands. So we would say, you know what, give me that tough pit bull or Rottweiler over a little Chihuahua anytime. But now, interestingly, I have seen a change. It's almost as if, and it happened seemingly overnight, that all of a sudden all these Chihuahuas started coming to my office and they were sweet as can be. And it's like all the Chihuahua breeders and Chihuahua enthusiasts got together when I said, hey, we got to stop this or we're going to lose our breed because they have this reputation. And so now I'd say 80% of them are so cute, so adorable, like they read the Golden Retriever book by mistake. And you still got about 20% that are the land sharks. So it's gotten better. Anyway, don't go away. We're going to be back after these short messages. When I come back, Shawn, I want to talk about, as a technology person, as someone who is intimately involved in our profession in pets, where do we see the pet world and the vet world going over the next, say, 10 to 20 years? So think about it while we have our break, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. Don't go away. We're back with Shawn Wilkie in a few.
Bear, the rescue dog, had very flaky skin, dropping a lot of fur, and the vet wanted to do steroid injections. I was at a dead end.
DINOVITE.com.
Probably 6 weeks after we started using Dinovite, no more flaky skin. He doesn't scratch and itch. It was awesome.
You get some Dinovite, how happy your dog will be.
Every rescue dog in America deserves Dinovite for 90 days.
DINOVITE.com.
Let's talk pets
Let's talk pets
on Pet Life Radio.
Pet Life Radio.
PetLifeRadio.com.
And welcome back. You're here live with Dr. Jeff here and Shawn Wilkie, our special guest from Talkatoo. And Shawn, have you been listening to our presentation here? Very entrenched in the tech world, and especially it relates to veterinary medicine. And as I'm working with AirVet and learning more and more about this tech world, I hear from many people that the pet industry has been growing by leaps and bounds. And some say this industry is basically positioning itself to be probably number 2 to the human healthcare industry as far as dollars spent, where the technology is going, and how important it's becoming to everybody. So, Shawn, where do you see our industry, the vet and the pet industry, going, and where do you see the biggest advancements being made?
Yeah, so I think that's a really interesting question. And I think, for all those pet owners and your listeners, I think the one thing that we need to realize is the veterinary profession, is anybody that's in a practice that they own themselves, they're not just a veterinarian. They're a veterinarian, they're director of HR, they're a business person, they're oftentimes an accountant, a hiring lead. They've got all of these other hats. And so I really think that technology is going to help remove some of those hats. We're going to see some workloads removed off of them, and we're going to see other workloads. SignalPet's a great example, where you have this artificial intelligence that's able to help the pet by helping the veterinarian, provided a second opinion. So I think you're going to see a lot of these low-level tasks replaced with technology. Talkatoo is a great example. Our software, all it does, it's quite a difficult thing, is it types text for veterinarians. So instead of them having to take a half an hour or 45 minutes to do a medical record, they can lean on a piece of technology. And so what I believe technology is going to do in the pet and vet world is it's going to take some of those lower level tasks. It's going to help automate things. We're going to start to see predictive medicine. I think, Jeff, that's probably the most exciting thing for me, is we're going to take these large data sets and we're going to use artificial intelligence to start predicting patterns. So you'll be able to, in the future, go in, the veterinarian will take a sample of your pet's DNA or your pet's blood, and they will be able to start to predictively diagnose things that haven't even started to show that they're going to happen yet. And I think that for me is the most exciting thing in the technology world when it comes to veterinary medicine, is predictive artificial intelligence driven diagnostic, but not to the point where we're going to just let the AI decide everything. It's going to say, here's some things to look at. Here's some things that we think are interesting. And here's some data to back up these assumptions. And I think that really is going to help our pets.
Where do you think, it's interesting. I also want to know what you think about, you mentioned veterinarians in practice. And now that you see this tremendous amount of consolidation going on in the industry, and, I think to some degree, some detriment, having been there, done that, where the individuality of a veterinarian's relationship with his patient and client seems to be lost when, in these big corporate hospitals, where they're trying to make the hospital they acquire into their style instead of allowing the success that this hospital was built on to remain in the style that it was built in. What do you think of that? And do you see possibly at some point a pendulum swinging back into favor the more of a small animal individual practice?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question as well. And I don't think that pendulum is going to swing back in the opposite direction. I think if we look at markets like the UK and Europe, where consolidation happened probably 15 years ago, it hasn't swung back. And so I think the reason for that is because of scale, just the scale of, these large hospital chains and the problems that they're able to solve. Ultimately, the reason we want to go to the veterinarian is because we care about our animals. We're not necessarily looking to go to the veterinarian to build a relationship. And listen, I'm a relationship guy. I love the relationships that I've created in the vet space, but ultimately what drives this industry is the health of our pets. And so because of these economies of scale and just this ability to be able to do things for less money and provide a different quality of care, I don't think you'll see it go backwards. I think it's here to stay.
And to me, again, as a good old fashioned practitioner, I see that it's interesting if you ask a parent, who's your pediatrician? I will met you on the tip of their tongue. Now what I'm finding out when I take calls on AirVet is that even if it's a call coming from an AirVet hospital, and I'll say, so who's your primary? Oh, I don't know. I just go to whoever's there. And I think that, again, it's a shame. Because if you ask one of my clients, who's your vet? Oh, Gerber. It's like, there's no doubt about it. And to me, as a practitioner, for example, I didn't become a surgeon, which I was actually thinking about, but I decided to go into GP was because I value and love the relationship that I have developed with my clients and they with me. And not only the clients, the pets. I mean, 90%, 80% of the pets that come to my practice love to come in. Whereas I've seen people tell me, oh my God, my dog hates the vet. So I think that if you don't have a chance to develop that relationship, that rapport, then it's a negative also. And then you mentioned the dollars and cents. Some of these corporate hospitals are, because of the economies of scale, they have to make money to buy all these practices. I find their prices are even higher than a lot of the individual practices.
Yeah, and I don't think you're wrong there, Jeff, but I think when you look at what we're going to be able to do with technology, like let's take artificial intelligence for an example. A lot of the conversations that I've had around artificial intelligence are with people that are part of the VCA, Mars, Banfield, Blue Pearl group, largest veterinary medicine company in the world. They have all of this data about all of these conditions that they're able to write software and look into those. It's almost like having a crystal ball. And so when you look at the consolidation of the veterinary world, the data is the valuable piece. And once you have the data, you can solve problems that you didn't even know that there was a solution for. And that's why I don't think it's going to slow down or change. I think it's going to continue at the same rate that it's continuing today, because those groups are going to have unfair advantage because they're leveraging technology.
So what do you think about the young veterinary hopeful today who is, as I did, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, wanted to be a veterinarian and, took a path that has been the best thing I've ever done and extremely successful? What is in store in the future as far as being a practice owner and actually making a really, really good living doing what they love to do?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm being honest, I would probably not be evaluating veterinary medicine for that career path today.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of reasons why. You have to look at the consumers, right? You have to look at who makes up the biggest segment of pet ownership or pet parents today. It's the millennials. And do they care about the relationship that they have with their veterinarian? Yes, probably a little bit, but way less than a couple of generations ago. They want to be able to open an app, get a solution, and move on with their life.
I see that. I agree. And that to me, I think is a shame. But you're right. The millennials are right now the largest segment of the pet parenting population, the fastest growing, and interestingly, the most spending. And they find our app. They don't even have a veterinarian. Many of them might say, "So how'd you hear about us?" And they'll go, "Oh, we just went online, and you guys come up like number one." And it's interesting that, to me, look, they use it, and that's from an AirVet perspective, or for any of this AI stuff. You're right. It is the way to go. And I'm thrilled about that. But I mean, it disturbs me to know, one of a friend of mine who is one of the most well-known veterinarians in the country, certainly as far from the veterinary world, consumers may not know him. The textbook of veterinary internal medicine was literally edited by him, still is. And we were talking at a conference a couple of years ago, and his son was at Cornell. And I said, oh, and that's where Steve went to Steve Ettinger went to vet school at Cornell. So I said, oh, is he pre-vet? He goes, and he looks at me like with disdain. He goes, oh, no. I go, and the way he said it, I said, wait, you wouldn't want your son? I mean, look at you. You are probably the most well-known and respected and certainly done very well for himself veterinarians in the United States. and you wouldn't want your son to follow your footsteps. He goes, not in a million years. So I think he agrees with you that he saw the writing on the wall, that this, the veterinary practice, the veterinarian as we knew it then, the old James Herriot philosophy, I think may be on the way out. It's a shame.
Yeah, and I think, Dr. Jeff, everything's changing, right? Like everything in all elements is changing in every area. And, technology drives a lot of this stuff, but I don't think we can blame technology. We have to blame consumer trends. We have to blame the people that have the money. They are deciding what they want. And we either change and adopt to serve the market, or we're left waking up one day wondering where our business went and realizing it went to somebody down the street that's giving consumers what they want.
Right. Absolutely. Nowadays, you're 100%. And I think that the only way to make it, if you were to want to do so, is to make sure you stay. As one of my colleagues is a friend of mine who is in the vet space. He's not a veterinarian, but he's started a group of hospitals all about technology. And I think that's what's going to happen. It's less personable. It's more technical. And like you said, it's giving the consumer, the millennial, what they want. They want it now. They don't care as much about the relationship. They want efficiency. They want speed. And, and that's what drives them. So they're going to the restaurant. They're getting, the Postmates to deliver it. And they don't really care about knowing the maitre d' and knowing the chef. And it's like, give it to me. This is what I want. I want it now. And so be it. I'm done. Thank you very much. So I see your point.
Yeah, Jeff, I think one of the most interesting things that you said on this show so far is that people, when they show up to use AirVet, they say, well, you were number one in the App Store. That used to be done from person to person, relationship to relationship. And now it's done blindly based upon the number of stars an app has. And that's such a part of the world that the veterinarians live in nowadays. If you have a 3-star review for your veterinary hospital and you're not doing something about it, that's a very dangerous thing, considering that all of the new customers that are going to replace the old customers have decided not to buy from you because maybe one bad experience happened in your hospital.
Right. It's very true. So anyway, we can go on, and I think we're going to have you come on back, because this is, for me, I find it very interesting. But that's all we have time for today. Shawn, I want to thank you so much. We'd love to work with you again, and we're going to talk about Talkatoo, because I love that idea. As I said, someone who needs that kind of help. I think it's a great feature. Where can people hear your podcast?
Yeah, so go to theveterinaryinnovation.com and subscribe wherever you like podcasts. If you like technology and you're in the vet space, you're going to love it. Veterinaryinnovation.com. Veterinaryinnovationpodcast.com.
Veterinaryinnovationpodcast.com. All right, everybody, you hear that? Anyway, thanks for joining me. Shawn, thanks for joining me as well. We will be here next week, same time, same channel here on Pet Life Radio's Ask the Vets with Dr. Jeff. You can go on, find me on Instagram. Would love to have you follow me at Dr. Jeff Werber. If nothing else, you're going to see a lot of really, really cute pictures and cute little tidbits. And you'll listen in for my AMAs as well. And if you would like any questions answered, especially if you'd like them live on AMA, you can go ahead and send them to me here at Pet Life Radio. That's Dr. Jeff at PetLifeRadio.com. And that's all we have time for. So we will see you here next week. Shawn, once again, thank you. VeterinaryInnovationPodcast.com. And for any of you professionals out there, especially in the medical space, veterinary or human, Talkatoo, go check that out as well. You will love it. All right. And Mark, thanks very much. And we'll see you guys all here next week.
Let's Talk Pets, every week on demand, only on PetLifeRadio.com.